as a lot of people say, it is what it is. And when you're looking at a holographic sight, you have quick acquisition. You can come up on the rifle and quickly look at what you're going to shoot and shoot it. Now, when you're looking at the scope, it's a scope. We can't expect the same thing. But if I am behind a scope and I need to shoot something for target practice or something for accuracy, that's what I would want to use. And that 1-4 is great, especially like if you're deer hunting or if you're doing some type of target practice, you have that flexibility to go 1-4. But if I'm doing close quarter drills or something like that, I would probably want the EOTech.
From a stationary position, this seemed to do really well.
Yeah.
We were stationary, even when we did some shooting from more awkward type positions like an urban prone. Even then, I actually found I thought this was not going to work from a an awkward position. It actually worked pretty well because what I found was you settled in behind the gun, the optic stayed right there, and then you can kind of move yourself around the optic. When I was shooting just say offhand or moving, that's when I found more trouble.
And that has to do with that specific eye box that you have to be within. So if you can ground the gun, in our case, off your shoulder from a brace position or on the ground or what have you, you can then get into that position more solidly rather than when you're shooting offhand and you're kind of floating in that eye box behind it.
Right.
If you get the heart rate up and the blood is pumping and
we did
extremities are moving, it's hard to really control that trigger. I would say that aim point, the EOTech really comes into play because you're not really concentrating on some of the elements that you need for that accuracy type shot, but you're able to get it in there.
Yeah, I did better with that on the run and gun stuff. Once my heart rate was elevated, that seemed to do better.
And I think what we found too is that each individual's eyes are going to make a difference in how you perceive both the reticle here and here. I mean,
you had three very different experiences.
Right, having had the laser eye surgery, you're talking about how the reticle is blurring when you try and shoot both eyes open through the scope. I didn't find that at all. On the contrary, having a partial astigmatism, I normally can't shoot very well with an EOTech because the reticle appears to me to be very pixelated. And it's hard for me to do as good work as I can with just a more basic red dot sight. So, your individual biology is going to figure into your perception of how an optic works for you too.
I think, in looking at where does the 1-4 really come into its own, where, at what distances, does this become optimal when you're comparing it to, just a 1x red dot. We found that we could do most things. I think we all agreed that 0 to 200 yards, the red dot was a lot of times faster, and we could get combat effective hits at that distance. Where this really came into play was, say, anything out past 200, or if you were sub 200 but looking to make very accurate hits.
Yeah, high precision.
Type hits.
Yeah.
Where the flexibility of being able to adjust from 1 all the way up to 4 power, was
right. Right. And to the Vortex credit, the power adjustment and magnification adjustment was very easy. So if you had the time and could sit there and crank that to 4 to make that percentage shot, the optic certainly lends itself to that. But what you get into is something that is trying to be a jack of all trades and is a master of none. So it's not as fast or as forgiving in terms of eye relief and that sort of thing as a red dot at 1x. And then you also pay that weight penalty for carrying this thing around. And if you aren't in a situation to where you're going to need that magnification regularly, you've got to ask yourself, is this something that I'm willing to put up with?
I mean, it is heavier.
It sure is. And you notice that switching
Absolutely.
it back and forth, especially doing the run and gun.
Yeah.
If you're doing any kind of movement or any kind of strenuous activity, a few extra ounces is going to make a difference. On a gun that's already set up with a fairly heavy kind of configuration in terms of the barrel, the rail system, all the other stuff that's on it.
And using these LaRue QD mounts, that will return to 0, we were taking this off, swapping that back on, running another course of fire,
Right.
swapping it back out again, and what you immediately realize that you pick up the rifle, which optic's on it. I mean, it's the weight's noticeable.
Right.
When you're doing that.
If I'm going deer hunting, I definitely want that scope. Or if I'm at an apple seed,
Yeah, those are two
I can
ways we found
definitely
out
use
this would
that.
be fantastic.
But if I need a fighting gun, that's not the way I would go. I would probably go for a red dot.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, I totally
some
agree
type
with you.
of
I would agree with that as well.
Yep.
Now, as far as the quality on the scope, I didn't see when the glass was clear for what little we were doing.
Right.
You know, Love My Woods will get more into that as far as all the technical data, and I'm sure he'll break out some spreadsheets and things like that.
No.
But yeah, so I mean, everything else as far as that was good.
Right. The quality of the optic was great, but you know, is this the type of optic that you would want on kind of a general purpose gun? You know, I mean, it really depends on what you're doing with the gun, and I think for, you know, certainly the applications that I have most of my guns set up for, I've got one rifle with a magnified optic on it, and that's it. Everything else has dots. So.
Well, guys, hope you appreciated that. We want to thank Love My Woods for having us out here and
Absolutely.
Shooting on this gorgeous day.
And thanks to Fenway for letting us use and abuse your toys.
Thanks, boss, for the rifle.
We'll be keeping that.
Yeah, and you can get this at, and I'm sure Love My Woods will mention this, but our buddy Alan over at A&A Optics carries the complete Vortex line, so he can get you anything you need. Thanks, guys.